meeting for Monday, April the 11th, 2022. I'll call the meeting to order and ask for the roll call, please.
Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Here.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Berenson.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Circo.
Present.
Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Townsend.
Present.
Councilmember Will Scherzer.
Present.
Mayor Turnbow.
Present. We have a quorum this evening. Would you please rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Under new business this evening, we have the first reading of Bill 3712. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3712 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3712 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, declaring the results of the April 5th, 2022 election and declaring this bill as an emergency.
Thank you. Is there a staff report, or do you want to give a report on that? Okay.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As outlined in Section 9.3 of the Raymore City Charter, the City Council shall declare the results of any municipal election at the next regularly scheduled council meeting. A municipal election was held on April 5th, 2022 for the positions of mayor, council members from each of the city's 4 wards for 2-year terms, and a council member for Ward 1 for a 1-year term. The official statement of certification of the election results has been distributed. In order to promote efficiency of the city's business items and permit the newly elected officials to begin their terms, Bill 3712 is presented as an emergency reading in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the clerk? If not, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
move that we approve Bill 3712, declaring April 5th, 2022 election results.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3712. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously 8-0. Could I please have the second reading? Since this is an emergency reading, could I please have the second reading of Bill 3712 in its entirety?
The second reading of Bill 3712 in its entirety, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, declaring the results of the April 5th, 2022 election and declaring this bill as an emergency. Whereas a general municipal election was held on April 5th, 2022, and whereas Section 9.3 of the Raymore City Charter calls for the council to declare the election results at the next regularly scheduled council meeting following the election. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Raymore, Missouri as follows. Section 1, it is hereby found and determined by a canvass of the votes by the City Council of the City of Raymore, Missouri at the election held on April 5th, 2022 in conformity with the Comprehensive Election Act of 1977, revised statutes of Missouri, and the provisions of the Charter and ordinances of the City of Raymore as follows. Mayor, 3-year term, candidate Christopher P. Turnbow, votes received 1,343. The City Council does find that Christopher P. Turnbow is the candidate for mayor who received the highest number of votes and shall hold the office for a 3-year term until a successor is duly elected or appointed and qualified according to law. Council member from Ward 1, 2-year term, candidate Reginald Townsend, votes received 196. Candidate Aaron Phantasma, total votes 143, my bad. The City Council does find that Reginald Townsend is the candidate for Council Member Ward 1 who received the highest number of votes and shall hold the office for a 2-year term until a successor is duly elected or appointed and qualified according to law. Council Member for Ward 1, 1-year term, candidate Victoria Wills, total votes received 285. The City Council does find that Victoria Wills is the candidate for Council Member Ward 1, who received the highest number of votes and shall hold the office for a 1-year term until a successor is duly elected or appointed and qualified according to law. Council member from Ward 2, 2-year term, candidate Thomas R. Circo, total votes 218. Candidate Tabitha Forster, total votes 231. The City Council does find that Tabitha Forster is the candidate for Council Member Ward 2 who received the highest number of votes and shall hold the office for a 2-year term until a successor is duly elected or appointed and qualified according to law. Council Member from Ward 3, 2-year term, candidate Kenneth Filer, total votes received 137. Candidate J.D. Holman, total votes received 195. The City Council does find that J.D. Holman is the candidate for Councilmember Ward 3 who received the highest number of votes and shall hold the office for a 2-year term until a successor is duly elected or appointed and qualified according to law. Councilmember from Ward 4, 2-year term. Candidate Dylan Stevie, total votes received 154. Candidate Sonia Abdelgawad, total votes received 307. The City Council does find that Sonia Abdelgawad is the candidate for Councilmember Ward 4 who received the highest number of votes and shall hold the office for a 2-year term until a successor is duly elected or appointed and qualified according to law. Section 2, it is further found, declared, and determined that notice of said election was duly given and published in the manner provided by law, and that said election was held and conducted in all respects in conformity with the Constitution and laws of the state of Missouri governing elections and subject to the provisions for charter cities. Section 3, severability. If any section, subsection, sentence, clause, phrase, or portion of this ordinance is for any reason held invalid or unconstitutional by any court of competent jurisdiction, such portion shall be deemed a separate, distinct, and independent provision, and such holding shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions thereof. Section 4, emergency reading. This bill is declared and authorized as an emergency and will be read in its entirety to promote the administration of government and permit the newly elected officials to begin their terms. Section 5, effective date. The effective date of approval of this ordinance shall be coincidental with the mayor's signature and attestation by the city clerk. Duly read this first time, this 11th day of April 2022. Be it remembered that the above ordinance was approved and adopted this 11th day of April 2022 by the following vote.
Thank you, Erica. If there are no questions of the city clerk, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
move that we approve the second reading of Bill 3712, declaring April 5th, 2022 election results.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Sir, although I suspect that the departed council member, Charlene Hubach, is probably shaking her fist at us from beyond, I will second the motion.
She did not like this process, did she? Yeah. Thank you, sir. The motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3712. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Next item on our agenda is the oath of office. If I could please have the elective officers please step down in front of the podium with the city clerk, and I will step down there as well for the oath of office. Councilmember Circo, if I could have you join me at the podium, please. Sir, after 4 years of dedicated service, it's hard to see that just a few words on a plaque is enough. You heard the words tonight of the oath of office. You upheld those words to that at the highest level, and we appreciate your service, sir, to the city of Raymore. And I want to read the plaque now. It says, Thomas R. Circo, in appreciation and recognition for your dedicated service and commitment to the city of Raymore, Missouri, as council member for Ward 1, well, we'll fix that. Ward 2, 2018 to 2022. That's why you did the front. That's the wrong ward. Yeah, I'll let you hold that. Would you like to say something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll take this time for a minute and say it's been a pleasure and an honor to work with this council, this mayor, this city, Mr. Fairborn, all the department heads, the chief. We've done a great job 4 years. I love the city. We love the city. Going to keep on pushing the city forward. It's growing well. To the people of Ward 2, I thank them very much for the voters that got out, the ones who voted for me. I'll always be here. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be in the city. I'm still a businessman here, and I do a lot of things. But it's been a pleasure and an honor to serve this great city. I will still serve in any capacity I can outside of the council ward or the seat. But again, thank you guys all very much. You're a great council. The mayor, you guys do a fantastic job. And I'm going to be here to support you anytime you need me, Mr. Fairborn. I will always be here. Thank you very much.
So this concludes our regular session. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn or for recess until the second session.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr.
I
Townsend.
move that we adjourn or recess from the regular city council meeting.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion,
Thank
sir.
you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn from the regular session. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much. So we do have some refreshments in the lobby if anybody'd like to partake.
Thank you very much.
Good evening again. I'd like to call to order the Raymore City Council special meeting for Monday, April the 11th, 2022. Could I please have the roll call?
Councilmember Abdel Gawad.
Here.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Berenson.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Forster.
Present.
Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Townsend.
Present.
Councilmember Wills.
Present.
Mayor Turnbow.
Present. We have a quorum. Would you please rise and join me in the pledge again? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And the next item on our agenda this evening is a presentation, and we have Stephen Rue with the Ray-Pec Choir. He is their director and would like to address the council this evening. Mr. Rue, how are you?
Oh, thanks for pushing the buttons. Appreciate that. I'm well. Thank you for having me here tonight. Many of you might recall that I stood before you way back in the fall. Actually, that was with the Raymore Arts Commission, as our choir was selected this last summer to present a concert in Tantera at the end of January as a part of the Missouri Music Educators Association Conference. Tremendous honor, the highest honor a choir can receive in our state was to perform at this, and a great group of kids auditioned last year, and we represented them in January. As a part of that, the commission helped us to arrange a piece specifically to close our program. We partnered with other organizations like the Raymore Sunrise Optimist Club for another piece, but the Raymore Arts Commission helped us perform I'll Fly Away. And many of you might recall back in December I brought the soloist of that, Zach Woodard, to a closed session, and he actually performed for you guys his solo. Do you remember this?
I don't.
Oh, that's okay.
I don't know where I
it was. It was a small
Sorry,
commission. It's
Stephen.
okay. It was a small group that day. But I want to thank this community for supporting the arts and for allowing these kids to shine in that way. We are now represented as a choir school around the state, and people look to Ray-Pec as a model choral program. In fact, around the country. In fact, tomorrow, I will have someone in my classroom from Philadelphia who's heard about our program just to observe the way we do business at RP Sings, which is amazing. And tonight, I wanted to present you, as a thank you, a plaque with a picture of the choir, the title of the piece that you sponsored, and I'd ask for you to find a way to display this somewhere. It has all the kids. They would love to come and visit this. And while he's coming down, we have a recording of the performance that I want you all to see first. It's going to come to your email first. Melissa's going to send that, and then we'll post it publicly in a couple weeks on the arts page at raymore.com. So,
Thank you so much. Appreciate you for supporting us.
we hope you enjoy the performance. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you, Mr. Rue. We appreciate that very much, very much. We'll now move on to personal appearances. We have with us tonight Kim Pearson with Dana F. Cole and Company to present the FY 2021 financial statements. Good evening.
Thanks for having me here tonight. Like I was mentioned, I'm going to provide the audit summary results for the fiscal year ending October 31st, 2021. You all received the presentation of the audit package. That's called the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. And you'll see in its length that it is very comprehensive. It includes not only financial statements, it includes note disclosures, and then several supplemental schedules and statistical schedules that span, in some cases, a period of 10 years. With that statistical information, you can see the growth of the city that's taken place during that time period and how the operations have changed. So there's a lot of information in this audit package. You'll also see in the audit package that the city did receive another certificate of achievement in financial reporting. That's issued from the government finance officers of United States and Canada. That's a very high level of achievement for the city, and it's the 11th straight year that the city has received such an award. That actually was for the prior year that is included in this year's audit package. The city will be applying for another certificate with this year's audit package, and I would anticipate that another award would be provided to the city after that review process is completed. Overall, our audit went very well this year. We had great communication and cooperation from the staff, and all of our requests of our inquiries, all of our documentation requests were provided timely to us and in a very organized manner. So the audit did go very well. The most important thing with our audit is our auditor's report. In that, we provide an opinion on the financial statements and the note disclosures. As you read through that, you'll see that we've provided an unmodified opinion. That's the best opinion available as a result of an audit. Speaks very highly of the city and the staff that work with all of our processes. We do have another report in the audit package. That's towards the hind end, and that is a report on compliance and internal controls. With that report, you'll see that we don't have any items of non-compliance that we're required to report on. And then we do only have one item related to internal controls, and that is us as auditors assisted with the city in putting the final draft together. City staff did do a majority of the preliminary draft. We did quite a bit of just putting everything else together and making sure everything reconciled out and tied out to the note disclosures and all other items. Because of that process, we're required to disclose that to you in the audit package. It's nothing unusual for a city this size, and it's something that we've reported on in prior years as well. One part, especially for those that are new to this audit package, the management discussion and analysis, that provides a very good summary of the financial statements. It includes summary tables of the prior year, and then it also provides some narratives that help you understand what some of the significant differences were and what took place with the city compared to the prior year. So I'd recommend that you read that portion. That's a very good area of information for the audited financial statements. So overall, again, I'd like to thank the city, all the staff that assisted with us, to all of our requests. And if anybody has any questions, I can address them. And if anybody has questions at a later time, please feel free to contact me and we can get those questions addressed as well.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Pearson at this time? Thank you, sir. Mr.
All right.
Fearborn, do you have anything to add to the report at this time?
I'd like to echo the auditor's statement about the outstanding work that is done each year on this from our finance staff. The importance being that the auditors shouldn't be putting the financials together. Their job is to audit the financials that we're presenting to them to give you an unbiased view of what's there. And with each passing year, more and more is being done by our finance staff to make this as pure a process as it can be. So again, kudos to our finance staff.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of Mr. Fearborn? If not, thank
All
you
right,
very much.
thank you very
sir.
much.
I appreciate it. We'll now move on to staff reports. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Gress to make a staff report for Development Services.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, members of the council, a brief but busy report as it relates to development services for the month of March. Single-family building activity continues to occur throughout the city. In the month of March, we issued 29 single-family building permits, which was up a little bit from the month prior. And talking with Mr. Warner, I think there are a couple permits that more permits that will be coming through here in the month of April. So a lot of activity going on as it relates to construction or permitting, I should say. Relative to construction, just driving around today, it's amazing to see the amount of activity going on, and actually all four of the wards here throughout the city. Building construction continues with the venue of the Good Ranch. A lot of those homes are starting to come together down close to the interchange. Single family wise, with the Alexander Creek and Eastbrook, both of those third plats are significantly under construction as well as it relates to infrastructure. If you look just outside City Hall with the South Metropolitan Fire District, their administrative offices, those continue to come together. The weather has really allowed a lot of contractors to catch up on a lot of work here so far this year. Construction continues on Building 3 of the Commerce Center, the million square foot building, so that's always good to see. They remain on schedule with that building. And then additionally, staff did receive plans for the what is coined Building 2, but is actually now the third building within that development. So Mr. Warner has commenced plans on those. Additionally, if you drive down 58, finally the Whataburger last month made some substantial progress with the steel erection going on, and then also the walls getting framed in here this month. So substantial progress being made on that front as well. Again, looking on the second page, as single-family construction trends go, we are starting to catch up with previous pace back in 2020. And again, talking with our building official, I anticipate those numbers continuing to rise over the next couple of months with all the subdivision activity going on throughout the city. Current projects, a couple of them we'll hear this evening, would be the Alara subdivision, the proposed rezoning and preliminary plan, as well as the Oak Ridge Farms fourth phase. Additionally, staff is under review on 3 separate single-family subdivisions, 2 of those being up in Creekmore with the Edgewater 8th and 9th final plat. Really nice lots proposed along the lake. In addition to the Timber Trails third plat, which has come back for staff review, there's some site work going out on that property right now, and they anticipate that project being in front of our Planning Commission here later this month. So a lot going on. What I wanted to point out here, just some activities that have gone in the department as it relates to staff. I think I updated you all last month that we did have a pre-construction meeting with Johnny's Tavern. Last week they did have some utility markings out on the site, so I anticipate those site grading to commence, and those actually, the building plans were dropped off to our building official on Friday. So he should start reviewing those building construction plans for that project. Mr. Eppert last month, as part of his ongoing monthly meetings, did meet with the assistant superintendent for the Ray-Pec School District, in addition to his counterpart in the city of Peculiar, Mr. Crow, just to review and update the school staff on building projects, proposed projects that are all going on in our office, to keep that relationship and that dialogue open. And Mr. Eppert also participated in a webinar as it relates to the 2020 census results. We've been doing a lot of work with the future land use plan and the comp plan, all of which are being influenced by the numbers that we were given here as part of the 2020 census. So a lot going on in our department. That concludes my staff report. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Gress. Any questions of Mr. Gress? Yes, Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good report, Mr. Gress. You know, always like your reports, and I like it when you're busy, too. So, but I was just looking at your report on the permits for single-family residential. If I do my new math, we're almost approaching already close to 50% of what we did all of last year. Am I reading that correct?
For, as it relates to the year-to-date, for
Yeah,
2021.
right. Yeah, year-to-date in total 2021. We surpassed year-to-date for 21
Yes,
to
you are
22.
correct.
Right. And my point to that is multifamily always gets the attention. You know, people see that and talk about it, but we are doing a lot of single-family residential. And if you drive around our neighborhoods, I know certainly my neighborhood, there's hardly a lot that they're not turning dirt over. So my question is, unless something just falls off, do you see that that boom still happening, keep happening to the end of the year?
I do. I do see that continuing into the year. I always tell people that when I started here in the city in 2016, the number of lots that we had available where somebody could come in and pull a permit was, I think, 1,200 or 1,300. And over time, as homes get built, that number erodes away. Right now, I think we're in the 200s or 300 range, which is up from here a couple of months ago. But as the council knows and the Planning Commission, we do see a significant number of single-family subdivisions that come through. Each of those adds to our lot inventory, if you will, of where any home can be built throughout the city. So with the activity going on, I would anticipate that momentum to continue for hopefully the rest of the year.
Anyone else? David, at what point does a lot actually come on to our figures as an available lot? Does it have to get through the final platting phase?
Yes, it would be, we consider it a buildable lot once the council has accepted the infrastructure of that phase of development, and essentially somebody could come in and pull a permit on any of those lots.
And that's why there are so many right now that we know about that are just kind of out there in limbo until that final plat comes through, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. If there's nothing else, I'll turn to Mr. Fearborn again. Any other staff reports?
Thank you, Mr. Gress. I would ask Chief Zimmerman to make a staff report for the police department.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I come before you tonight in recognition of National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. This week is a time to celebrate and thank telecommunicators across the nation, commonly referred to as dispatchers, who serve our communities, citizens, and public safety 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just a little history about National Telecommunicators Week. In 1994, President Clinton signed Presidential Proclamation 6667. I was a little concerned about the 3 sixes.
I know, right?
Declaring the second week of April as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. As President Clinton said in the original proclamation, these dedicated men and women are more than anonymous voices on the telephone line. They are local police, fire, and medical professionals who use public safety telecommunications to quickly respond to emergency calls. We rely on their knowledge and professionalism as they make critical decisions, obtain information, and quickly dispatch needed aid. On countless occasions, our Raymore dispatchers have stood between our citizens and disaster. With emergency medical dispatch training, they frequently provide life-saving instructions during those precious moments awaiting an ambulance response. And sometimes the information they receive is critical to the prosecution of cases based on what they're told by the caller. They work long hours, they work weekends, they work holidays, and are the most critical first point of contact for our citizens, often in their time of greatest need. Just as important, they are the lifeline of information and assistance for the Raymore and Peculiar Police Departments and the South Metro and West Peculiar Fire Departments, or 135 individual first responders in those 4 departments who may come screaming on the air for help at any given moment. Those numbers don't even include the countless calls for information about city services like water billing, or are they going to plow my street this week, and shutoffs, monitoring the air traffic of those snowplow drivers, and watching the closed-circuit cameras throughout the city. You've often heard me say that I started my career as a dispatcher for the KCPD almost 43 years ago now. That makes me really old. It was before 911 existed, and I worked the fire strikes and was on duty when the Hyatt Regency skywalks collapsed, but it was still one of the best jobs I ever had. Dispatchers are truly the unsung heroes, not just for police in the criminal justice system, but also for fire and for EMS. They are the air traffic controllers of emergency services, keeping everyone safe and calm and doing their best to land all the planes. So I'd like to recognize all of them. I told them they didn't have to come tonight since it was the 2 meetings and all that.
Right.
But you do have a couple of pictures there in front of you on the dais, just showing some of the fun things that they're doing downstairs to celebrate this week. For those of you who don't recognize Napoleon Dynamite, that's Pokey. So today was movie day downstairs, but their supervisor does a great job recognizing them and creating a great environment down there for them to work. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, in addition to what the chief said tonight, the Cass County Emergency Services Board is also recognizing all the dispatchers in the county. And when you think about how critical it is and all the calls for service that come in to all the different agencies, there's like 42 different first responder agencies here in Cass County, and we only have like 60 of them countywide. And when you think about that, you lose one, you lose a critical element of that ability to deliver 911 services to the folks here in Cass County. So we're really appreciative of the dedication of our dispatchers, both full-time and part-time. Our officers and the citizens of our community couldn't receive those vital services or provide those vital services without them. So thank you, Chief. I appreciate you highlighting that this evening.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Holman.
Here, here, Chief. Excellent report. Good job. On a different topic, and take a little bit of a left turn, I just want to make sure my information's correct. Since we have purchased and been using our license plate readers, we've made 2 major arrests using those LPRs in the last couple of months. Is that correct, Chief?
Yes, sir, and I would be happy to report more fully on that. We actually have our records clerk, who also prepares our crime report, our crime analysis report, tracking those specifically, the arrests and stops that we're making as a result of the license plate reader and the stationary cameras as well.
I, for one, would welcome that report, Chief.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you. Mr. Fearborn, anything else?
Thank you, Chief. Just a reminder to the council, we do have a work session next Monday night, April 18th. Currently 3 items on the agenda. A discussion on the use tax. You'll remember the possibility of revisiting a use tax with our citizens. The air handler emergency that we experienced before the meeting tonight. We're replacing the unit that's bad tonight. Unfortunately, the other 2 units are going out, and we're going to explain to you what is happening and then coming to you all with another budget amendment to get the entire HVA system back up and working again. And then would like to have a discussion with the council about the potential for a program to recognize our current and past board and commission volunteers in a kind of a formal method and over a very short period of time. Those 3 items for discussion next Monday night. Item B for you all this evening is on the new business agenda for tonight, item D, E, and F. You will note that the bill numbers for those actually revert back in time to start 3605, 3606, and 3607. All of the materials within the packet reference those bill numbers, but the bill numbers are actually 3705, 3706, and 3707. And the bill will actually be introduced by the mayor and read by the clerk in the 36 format, but when the motion is made to dispose of the item, there'll be the request for an amendment to change those to 37s. And our apologies from staff on that. That concludes staff reports this evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn. Any questions of Mr. Fearborn at this time? If not, we'll proceed on to the consent agenda. There are 2 items on the consent agenda tonight. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of those items.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve consent agenda item A, City Council minutes from March 28th, 2022, and item B, Resolution 22-12, the 2021 curb project acceptance and final payment.
Thank you, sir. The motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda, both items. Any further discussion? Oh, I need a second. Sorry, sir.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda this evening. Any further discussion? Yes. Ms. Forster.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I did research and watch the past video of the last meeting and also went through the packet, so I will be voting today. I feel
Okay.
comfortable doing
Right.
that.
Thank you. Anyone else in discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. We'll now move on to unfinished business. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3702 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3702 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing an amendment to Park Fund 25 for the 2022 Spirit of America celebration.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
move that we approve Bill 3702, the budget amendment for J&M displays.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3702. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3703 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3703 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing an agreement with American Ramp Company to construct a new skate park in the amount of $225,000.
Thank you. For no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
move that we approve the second reading of Bill 3703, award of contract American Ramp Company.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. The motion has been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3703. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3704 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3704 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with True Green Limited Partnership to provide fertilization services at municipal facilities in the amount of $5,182.59.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve the second reading of Bill 3704, award of contract True Green Limited Partnership.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3704. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Thank you. We'll now move on to new business. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3708 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3708 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the zoning map from C2 General Commercial District to R3A Multiple Family Residential District, a 9.45 acre tract of land located south of West Pine Street, east of North Madison Street in Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. Is our staff report?
Public hearing, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. This does require a public hearing, so I'll open a public hearing at this time and ask for a staff report.
Thank you, Your
sir.
Honor. I would ask Mr. Gress and Mr. Krass to make a joint staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. I will start out, Mayor, members of the council. Thank you this evening. Tonight, Mr. Sean Siebert, representing the Oak Ridge Farms subdivision and development, is here to request a reclassification of zoning of approximately 9.45 acres of land located generally south of Pine Street, west of North Madison, from its current C2 general commercial zoning classification to an R3A multiple family residential district, which would allow for the continued expansion of the Oak Ridge Farms subdivision. As indicated, this meeting does require a public hearing, and so tonight's meeting was advertised in the March 24th edition of the Raymore Journal, and items of record include the mailed notices to adjoining property owners, the notice of publication in the Journal, the Unified Development Code, the application, the growth management plan, the staff report, the applicant's conceptual plan, and the memorandum of understanding prepared by city staff. To illustrate some of the history on this property as it relates to where we came from and where we are today, these lots have been platted and zoned as commercial since they were originally incorporated into the city, were zoned as so around 1985, in the mid-1980s, and have remained undeveloped since. A little more recently, adjacent to the property would be the Point at Raymore Townhomes, which is located southeast of the subject property. That development obtained its R3A zoning in June of 2009 by the City Council. And more recently, the Oak Ridge Farms third plat, which includes the single-family and two-family dwelling units that are currently under construction, those lots were rezoned from R1 single-family to PUD planned unit development to allow for that construction on September 28th of 2020. A good neighbor meeting for this request was held on Wednesday, March 23rd at Centerview. 7 residents and business owners attended that meeting in addition to city staff, the developer, and their engineering team. And staff did submit kind of a synopsis of that discussion, some of the questions and answers that were asked. And I'm happy to elaborate on any of those if the council members have any specific questions. Looking at some of the staff comments, as I mentioned, right, the request tonight is really specific to the zoning of the property and not so much the layout or the number of units. It would really portray to the zoning of the property that would allow that future development. And so I just wanted to point out that the next step, if the rezoning is considered and approved this evening, would be a site plan review by the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as a final plat application that would eventually make its way back to the City Council. The spirit of that being that within the Unified Development Code, there is a specific section that outlines the use standards for this type of development, attached single family or multiple family dwelling units. And included in your staff report are those requirements as it relates to building separation, number of buildings per lot, all the requirements as it would relate to the future development of this property, in addition to the uses that would be allowed within that zoning district and the bulk and dimensional standards as well. The subject property currently is identified as appropriate for commercial on within the city's growth management plan. As I mentioned, the property has remained vacant since it was initially annexed into the city. The proposed concept that the applicant will discuss with you this evening, as well as staff, really takes a look at what it would be considered viable commercial or residential land as it relates to this property. And so the concept you'll see tonight does look at preserving some of the commercial zoning that is currently existing on the overall property. The request here in front of you all this evening is for a specific area within the property that the applicant is pursuing. And again, you'll see that conceptual plan further into the staff report here this evening. Though not required with this type of zoning request, staff did prepare an MOU for this rezoning request. It will restrict future development to be consistent with what is being proposed by the developer. And would run with the property in its entirety. So any deviations from that in the future would require an amendment to that plan and that process as well. Again, as I mentioned, if the rezoning is considered and approved this evening, moving forward, the next step would be site plan approval from our Planning Commission and final plat approval from the Planning Commission and City Council. I mentioned earlier in our staff report that staff had a meeting with the RAPEC administration, the assistant superintendent, and again shared the details of this project and indicated that they were aware of this project and did not feel that they would have any issues serving the needs as it would relate to any children coming from this development in the future. At this point, I will pass it over to Mr. Krass to address some of the comments that were reviewed as it relates to traffic with this project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gress. Kind of want to start with an overview of, 58 Highway. If council recall, back in August, we presented some findings from the West Gateway traffic study, and I just want to kind of summarize those again. We hear a lot of general concerns about the capacity of 58 Highway, congestion on 58 Highway. So we took a look at some things, and the Federal Highway Administration, they considered a free flow of traffic capacity on a facility like 58 Highway, a 4-lane facility to be, that is signalized to be 49,000 vehicles a day. The West Gateway traffic study did traffic counts. They found the current traffic volumes on 58 Highway to be right around 29,000 vehicles, or about 60% of what the FHA considers free flow capacity of that roadway. Also, going back to 2004, at the time they did traffic counts for that as part of the Transportation Master Plan, traffic volumes at Kentucky and 58 Highway were 26,000 vehicles a day. So in the 18 years, we haven't seen a lot of traffic growth on 58 Highway. And so when we were looking at that back in August, we started looking at things, and there has been a significant investment in infrastructure in the roadway network. Roads that did not exist in 2004, and I just want to run down a list. Fox Ridge Drive from Johnson to 155th Street, Johnson Drive from Silvertop Lane to Dean Avenue, Dean Avenue from 58 Highway to North Cass Parkway, Westgate Drive, 155th Street's been reconstructed to improve the rideability of that road, North Cass Parkway and the interchange, Lucy Webb Road was reconstructed, North Madison Street was reconstructed. In the future, Sunset Lane will be constructed to 163rd Street, and 163rd Street connected to the area by where the Creekmore Clubhouse is. Also another road that I forgot to list at the time, but Sunset terminated at Pine Street, and so from Pine Street to 58 Highway was constructed post 2004. So there have been significant improvements, and it kind of shows up in some other areas. In the area adjacent to Oak Ridge Farms, traffic volumes are about 8,000 vehicles a day, or about 16% of capacity. In 2004, in that same segment, traffic was about 14,000 vehicles a day. So that's one segment that there's been a reduction in traffic due to the improvements to the network. I had to think back quite a ways today, but when I first got here and we were looking at planning these improvements, if you got east of Huntsman Drive, there was no continuous north-south road until you got to Madison Street. There was Johnson Drive, but that kind of wanders through the Silver Lake neighborhood. So if you didn't really know your way around, but for a continuous roadway north-south, you had to go all the way to Madison Street. That's not the case today. So based on that information, we do consider the roadway network adequate to support the rezoning application. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't some problems on 58 with traffic flow. There are some of the characteristics of the road do contribute to reductions in traffic flow. The biggest contributor is the number of access points, especially those without a right turn lane. You know, if vehicles have to slow down to make that right turn into the driveway. So it's not only that vehicle, but it creates a shock wave that ripples back to whatever that platoon of vehicles following behind. So each one of those have to slow down, and the gaps in between the vehicles compress. So basically, in some areas of the corridor, the outside lane functions as a right turn lane. You have the same issue with the continuous left turn lane. Vehicles in which would normally be the through lane are slowing down and merging into the left turn lane. All of that at times does have impacts to the traffic flow, but not to the point where we're seeing significant drops in level of service. We're just, the studies we're doing just aren't showing that. So we do consider the roadway network adequate to support this proposed rezoning. That concludes my staff report for this
Thank you, Mr.
application.
Krass. Any questions of Mr. Gress or Mr. Krass at this time? Yes, Ms. Forrester.
I'm just curious, I didn't see that report in here. Is there any way that the information that you just gave us, is there a way you could forward that, or is there a link somewhere where we could have the report of the findings?
Yes.
That'd be great if you could. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Gress, for that presentation. When I first saw this, my first reaction is, I know we're trying to kind of revitalize that area. We've talked about doing some things to increase business activity in that area, and I know there's more to come for that, hopefully. So my first reaction is seeing that we're going to eliminate a commercial district and put in a residential district. In reading through the notes in here, I know at the Good Neighbor meeting, there were a lot of things said. Can you speak just a little more? You gave a great presentation, but can you speak just a little more to anybody that maybe is watching? I know we've struggled for years to try to get this facility. Have we had any interest in this at all for any commercial development?
Since I've been with the city, there has been very little interest in this area. I will let the applicant speak to kind of the bigger picture of the commercial lots and the preservation of that area. The reason, staff's perspective on this really looks at the depth of the property as it relates to the frontage along 58 Highway, which is what drives commercial interest here in Raymore, is the visibility and access to 58 Highway as the main thoroughfare. And so you look at a piece of land like this that is as kind of deep and narrow as some of these individual lots are. One thing that's not really shown on the map here is the number of parcels that make up this area that the applicant is pursuing. A number of those are what I would consider piano key lots, where they're long, very narrow strips of land. And so while a portion of those lots, because of their frontage, are deemed viable commercial development, you're left with a long strip of undeveloped land. And I use the example of the property directly adjacent to this, the Perkins Automotive. A long-standing business that has done fairly well, but you look at the remainder of that property beyond their footprint, and it's undeveloped. It becomes unsightly at times in certain areas of the city. The question of who maintains that and what is the future for those longer, narrow lots. And so staff's kind of review in this, it was truly looking at, in terms of future development as part of the 58 Highway Corridor Plan that you mentioned, what does staff see this area looking like? Another thing to look at is what businesses look for in addition to frontage and visibility, which is customers. So filling in those unusable commercial spaces with other options that would add to the demand for future commercial development is really the concept behind the project you see here this evening. Staff has required the area that we deemed viable for commercial development, which is consistent along that corridor. If you look at the existing buildings and property lines, part of this request was to require that to remain, because we do see that as viable in the future. The question being then, what do you do with the rest of that land? And the concept plan that the applicant provided staff was a good plan, and that's what you see before you this evening.
Appreciate that. And just to add to that too, the two lots that are along 58 are obviously not part of this plan. I took a second look at that too and look a little closer, and really the back, if you keep going back, if they do what, like you said, what Perkins Automotive did, that property behind there really isn't very useful without spending a lot of money by a developer.
Correct.
For those front lots. So again, thank you for your report. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? If not, I'll turn to Mr. Siebert, if there's no further questions of staff, and ask if the applicant, yes, Mr. Grass.
You wouldn't mind, I meant to take it back from Mr. Krass to wrap up the staff report
You didn't
briefly.
say
I'm
that.
sorry.
Come on.
I should have been more clear.
We got one more. Oh, Kevin Barber would like to ask another question.
I got a question about the MOU. One of the things that we hear all the time is, this is great now, but what if the development happens and later down the road, if they sell it, what happens to the development? I poured through this thing, and I think Jonathan, this may be for you, on page 140, General Provisions, Section 2, it says the covenants contain, I won't read the rest of it, but the covenants would be the MOU, and that would follow the title to the property. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, so, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Gress, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to wrap up. The Planning Commission at its April 5th meeting did review this application and submit their findings of fact to the City Council. At that meeting, they did vote unanimously 8-0 to accept staff's proposed findings of fact and forward this case to you all with a recommendation of approval.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Siebert, would you care to address the council at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If you bear with me one moment, I'm going to broadcast a presentation to each of your computers.
My name's Sean Siebert. My address is 33 I Street, Lake Lotawana, Missouri. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm here to ask for the rezoning of the subject commercial property to residential R3. This evening, we'll present to you the fourth phase of Oak Ridge Farms. Let's see if this works. Here we go. So as David said, the property is south of Pine Street, east of Madison Street. Essentially, it's behind Sonic. This property is sat vacant simply because no commercial business sees its location as viable based on the topography and the excavation required. Our intent here is to create a win-win. We'll keep the prime location of the Madison Street side as commercial lots, and we'll ask for your vote today to rezone the land behind the commercial lots into multifamily. This slide shows, this was the first building I built at Oak Ridge Farms on the left. It's the first building we got occupancy on. The picture on the right shows the marker of where the monument is for our entrance to Oak Ridge Farms. So you drive from Madison, probably about 600 yards down to our monument. So we sit quite a ways off 58. Here's some renderings of our proposed project. We have fully stucco exteriors. Our HOA will be the same as Oak Ridge Farms HOA, so it'll be included as part of the fourth plat. All maintenance-free exteriors, so maintenance provided. Oak Ridge Farms is the highest standard of multifamily property. It's what I care about. It's important to have a well-managed, maintained, and high-end property to bring more residents into our city. Now, we talked about 2 commercial lots that sit on 58. There's actually 3. There's a third one that exists next to Sonic, closer to Pine Street. It's an important part of this deal. It's the entrance into Pine Street from Madison. It's our intent, with the help of the city, to redesign this for a more picturesque entrance, curb appeal, and overall better traffic flow. Here's a layout of what we'd like to do. Again, the commercial lots will remain on Madison Street. Approximately 100 units will go behind Sonic, with a only residential entrance into the community located off Pine Street. So that's where you'll see that red arrow towards the top middle of the photo. There's some really nice oak trees that run down Pine Street. All those trees will remain. So there was some talk at Planning and Zoning about the commercial lots and the grade, so I've added this into the slide. This is a current photo. The grade actually at the curb somewhat matches the curb. It doesn't fall off right at these particular 2 lots that we had purchased. The intent here is to pad these lots up so they'll be completely flat and elevated commercial lots that sit flush with the curb. It would roll back down to the neighborhood behind that. But I wanted to add this slide in because there was some concern about that. This was sent to me back in January. It's proposed, kind of shows multifamily. It's drawn up by the city. I think David did this when he was in his previous position. It seems to be that it was the intent for a while to rezone this property. Given this is the entrance into Oak Ridge Farms, you can see why I feel strongly that if anyone else were to take on this project, I feel that it could have a detrimental impact to all the property we put in the back. I give you my word that I will continue to build and maintain high-end product just as I have in Phase 1, Phase 2, and now Phase 3 of Oak Ridge Farms. In return, I ask for your vote this evening. We are here because we want to continue our long-term relationship with the city, and we care about the future and prosperity of Raymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Any questions of Mr. Siebert? Yes, Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, Mr. Siebert, I'll tell you, I'm going to ask the city the same question when they want to develop across the street on Pine. How do you plan to deal with the trees? Are you just seeing them as, let's bulldoze all that stuff and burn it, like I watched on Election Day with Lauren Jones a few years ago for the Compass facility? I'm glad that facility's there, but I feel like I don't know, when we get to the city property, I'm definitely going to say, hey, some of these trees are valuable, especially the way wood is right now. Do you have any thought to that?
I do. We spent, you may have not driven through Oak Ridge Farms, but the history of the property is it's an old tree farm. So it's obviously, I call it scorch the earth mentality. It's obviously much, much cheaper to develop when you go in and cut every tree down and plant new trees back. Now, if you drive through Oak Ridge Farms, you'll see that's not what we did. We left every possible tree from the tree farm there, and I think I planted about 700 new trees on the site, not by requirement. So trees are a big thing to us, and it's the way we do things. We wanted to keep this as much of the integrity of the property as we could.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Ms. Forster.
You said you're going to raise up to level it out, which I think is great, but what about Sonic then? I mean, have you thought about or have you spoke with them what that's going to look like? Because if you raise up that level, I mean, with the runoff and the way it's going to go, I just wasn't sure. I'm assuming that's been planned out or you've done some.
I'm going to let Matt Schlick, engineer, take that one if that's all right.
Sure.
Evening, Matt Slish, Engineering Solutions, 50 Southeast 30th Street, Lee Summit, Missouri. So Sonic, as it sets right now, is setting down kind of at a lower grade than 58 Highway. What we'll do is build up that pad site that would be for where the building's set, but as it would drain kind of towards that Sonic area, we'll control that stormwater runoff and direct it back towards the east and into that channel. It'll be a stormwater system, like a pipe system of some sort. And then the parking lot will have curb and gutter and controls that will stop that stormwater from being directed towards them. So no additional runoff will be headed towards Sonic or have any problems on that side of it.
Anything else? Anyone else this time? As this is a public hearing and the public hearing is open at this time, I would entertain anyone from the public that wants to address the council on this particular subject. Please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public hearing at this time. And if there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve the first reading of Bill, I have it in my notes, but I don't make sure I have it right as we get our computers back. I have it.
3709, actually.
Just want to make sure.
Nope, it is 8. Yeah, 3708.
Yes. I move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3708, Oak Ridge Farms, fourth phase rezoning from C-2 to R3A.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3708. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Okay, please have the first reading of Bill 3709 by title only.
The first reading of Bill 3709 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the zoning map from R1P Single Family Residential Planned District to PUD Planned Unit Development District, a 52-acre tract of land located south of Johnston Drive, west of Dean Avenue in Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. Since it does also require a public hearing, I'll open the public hearing at this time and ask for a staff report.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Gress and Mr. Krass to make staff report on this item as well.
Thank you, sir. I will kick it off again here, and then as a reminder, I will wrap up the meeting, or the staff report here towards the end after Mr. Krass. Brad Kemp, representing Clayton Properties Group, is here this evening to request the reclassification of zoning of approximately 52 acres of land located generally north of Lucy Webb Road, west of Dean Avenue, and south of future Johnston Drive, or the current location of Benton House. Requesting the reclassification of zoning from its current R1P single-family residential plan district to a PUD planned unit development to facilitate the development of the proposed Alara subdivision. The growth management plan does identify this property as appropriate for low-density residential development, and staff has included a number of site pictures to kind of orient you on this large tract of land as well. Because tonight does require a public hearing, tonight's meeting was advertised in the March 24th edition of the Raymore Journal. Items of record include the mailed notices to adjoining property owners, the notice of publication, the Unified Development Code, the application, the growth management plan, the staff report, the preliminary plan, and the MOU prepared by city staff. A little bit of the history on this specific property. In February of 2004, this property was rezoned from its previous A agricultural and M1 light industrial to its current R1P single-family planned designation. In addition, the preliminary plat, which is still valid for the Timber Trails subdivision, was approved on February 9th of 2004 as well. The second plat of the Timber Trails subdivision was approved a year later on February 14th of 2005. And at its August 11th, 2014 meeting, the City Council issued and approved a conditional use permit for a senior living facility, which is currently known today as Benton House. Because it is a rezoning, it did require a good neighbor meeting, which was held here at City Hall on Wednesday, March 16th. 3 residents attended that meeting here in the council chambers, in addition to city staff and the applicant and their team. And again, staff has summarized some of the questions and answers that were given as it relates to this project. Some of the staff comments I mentioned, the existing Timber Trails preliminary plat, which does apply to this tract of land, as well as the additional land that has also been developed within the Timber Trails subdivision. This particular area of that preliminary plat originally was approved for 170 single-family lots, or I'm sorry, 164 single-family lots, whereas the proposal before you here this evening proposes 170 single-family lots, and then one additional concept that I'll get into here in just a minute that we are referring to as a live-work component here for this project. The benefit to the PUD is that it gives the applicant the flexibility to define their development standards based on the type of product that they wish to build here within the city. And so included on page 8 of the staff report here, or page 156 of your packet, are the bulk and dimensional standards for the 4 different housing products that the applicant intends to build if this is approved here. And I'll let the applicant talk a little more in detail about each one of those units as it relates to the overall subdivision. But again, the subject property, in addition to the single family, is proposing kind of a new use to the city, something that is currently allowed by city code. We just have not seen this type of development here yet in the history of Raymore, and it's what we're deeming a live-work component. Is located at the northeast corner of this property there at Johnston and Dean Avenue. It would be classified under our zoning code as dwelling units located above the ground floor, generally of a commercial or office space or use within a proposed building. And so as it is outlined in the staff report and the MOU, you will see that within that particular portion of this proposed plan, dwelling units located above ground floor are permitted in that area only. I do believe there are 9 of those proposed units. As you'll see in the staff report, parking for those uses, in addition to the number of commercial or office uses that could be included in any of those commercial spaces, have been accounted for in our review. Staff felt it important just because of the proximity to the proposed single family that's as part of this application, in addition to some of the other existing development around that area, that we pay close attention to the types of uses that would be allowed within that, really just because of the uniqueness of the concept itself, and then the type of product that they're proposing being the mixed use. And so on page 157 of the staff report, you'll see a list of 13 specific uses that staff has called out as being prohibited in any of these commercial spaces. Outside of that, any use that is outlined as permitted in the C1, C2, or C3 zoning district or professional office would be allowed in those units, again, with the exception of those 13 that have been outlined and provided to you this evening. In addition to this, and we'll get into the next item here following this, would be that the applicant has agreed as part of their subdivision development to take on the construction of the Johnson Drive extension to further serve and add additional access into this subdivision, and that will be covered under a separate item here this evening. Additionally, a type A screen would be required by code as a separation between the detached single-family homes and the proposed live work, and that was really a function just of the potential for traffic, commercial traffic specifically, coming in and out of those live work units. Staff felt it necessary to provide some additional screening to mitigate those impacts. Again, off-street parking requirements have been provided here in the staff report this evening. Some of the amenities that you'll see on the proposed plan and within a MOU that are referenced would be a swimming pool, a clubhouse, a playground, walking trails throughout the subdivision, multi-purpose turf activity areas, landscape buffers within the development, and then stormwater ponds with decorative fountains to account for stormwater BMPs and stormwater runoff. I will pause here and pass it to Mr. Krass to cover the questions on traffic and then conclude from here.
Thank you, Mr. Grass. Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Again, as with the Oak Ridge development, Dean Avenue was designed and constructed with knowing and to support development of the adjacent properties. So there is capacity there. But we do have to recognize that there is a significant bottleneck at Dean Avenue and 58 Highway. A lot of the solutions to that are outside of our control. West of Dean Avenue, it's under MoDOT and Belton control and jurisdiction to improve the traffic flow through that segment. However, as part of the West Gateway traffic study, we did look and asked them specifically to look at what can we do within that corridor, basically from south of Sam's Club to 58 Highway. And they came up with some recommendations for some change in access points, some access modifications, a traffic signal. Implementation of all of these, we need cooperation with the abutting property owners. So we've developed a concept plan and sent it off to them for their review and comment, and we'll be reinitiating some of those conversations with them as we approach our CIP planning process. Also, as we discussed, providing alternative routes can also have a significant impact on the flow of traffic. We're really pleased that they were able to bring forward the reimbursement agreement for Johnson Drive. Also, we have started some conversations with Belton regarding an overpass at Lucy Webb Road that will connect Lucy Webb to Cambridge. In fact, I'm meeting with my counterpart tomorrow prior to the MARC meeting, and we'll start having some discussions of what that may look like. But that concludes my staff report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of Mr. Mr. Krass, before we go back to Mr. Gress? Mr. Gress.
I'm sorry, you will see that the Planning Commission did provide their proposed findings of fact at their April 5th meeting. At that same meeting, they did vote, again, unanimously 8-0 to accept the staff proposed findings of fact, and forward this application to the City Council with a recommendation of approval. That will conclude my staff report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff at this time? Yes, Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excellent report, gentlemen. I appreciate it. I meant to say it earlier, but I also appreciate the traffic report on the previous agenda item as well. All good information. Just real quick on the dwelling units in this single-family community that we're looking to rezone. Are those also a single-family, for sale or lease, or these are for sale units? How is that being marketed, I would say?
I will let the applicant kind of discuss what their intentions would be for developing and selling homes. As it stands right now, they would be detached single-family lots like you would find in any other subdivision. So they would be available for sale, lease, rent, whatever the developer chooses. In our discussions, it would be that these would be for sale, under construction, for homeowners here within the city.
From a zoning perspective, that it would still be a part of the R1 that we're looking at tonight?
It would be the use would be single family, which is allowed in R1. The zoning, however, would be the PUD. And the reasoning behind that, it kind of ties back into that live-work component in the sense that there are two different uses on the property under the current proposal, the detached single family as well as the live-work, which is the dwelling units above the ground floor. That would not be allowed in an R1P zoning district. So that was really the basis for the request for rezoning.
Gotcha, okay. And then lastly, on the MOU, and it speaks to walking trails, but in the conceptual design, I don't necessarily see anything that really calls out trails in that.
And I'll let the applicant elaborate on that. In our discussions, there are some topographical issues that they were not comfortable showing that a specific location because that would be subject to change based on the phases that they move forward with. But the inclusion of those in the MOU does require that those be added as part of the development of the subdivision.
Well, that's good enough answer for me. And then lastly, this particular stretch of road, there's a dead spot with respect to street lights. And I know with the Timber Trails third phase, there was discussions about, what are we doing with street lights, and has been ongoing conversations about development. When development comes, street lights will kind of go in to kind of brighten that area. Does this development have a requirement to put some street lights in to kind of fill in that gap?
I don't know that the requirement would spill outside of this subdivision. The streetlights are already installed along Dean Avenue, and so that requirement will be taken care of because they're existing. Streetlights would be required within the development, and I would point out, because you mentioned it, that question did come up at the Good Neighbor meeting relative to the street lighting there around the curve of the outer road and as it connects into Lucy Webb and Dean. And so I'll kind of pass it to Crass. I know streetlights was a project that was included in, I believe, the CIP to look at those types of intersections. So I'll pass that to Mr. Crass.
Yeah. We'll be looking at installing streetlights as part of next year's CIP along Johnson Drive and see what other gaps are there.
Okay. And similarly, when it comes to sidewalks on the east side, there is no sidewalk from Lucy Webb to Johnston Drive. There is on the west side, but I don't think we want our residents to have to cross the street to get onto a sidewalk. I don't know if that's a part of CIP to address.
If you indulge us, we'll verify that. I am pretty sure that was a requirement of the Timber Trails third development to put that sidewalk in on the east side of Dean Avenue, but if David and I will verify that tomorrow and follow up with you.
Thank you.
I can actually clarify that now that I understand where you're talking. On the east side of Dean Avenue, there's actually a trail segment. Right now, it currently meanders on the first and second plats of Timber Trails, kind of through the trees. That was actually approved in place of an actual sidewalk along Dean Avenue, and so that trail will be extended as part of the Timber Trails third plat.
Through the tree line there?
Yes.
Now cut down?
Correct.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. Thank you for indulging me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Abdelgawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of quick questions that came to mind thinking about when we were looking at Sendera, that was, with their plan to build different kinds of houses, different sizes of lots and all of that. I don't know if this is a question for the developer coming later or if you've already discussed this. What's the particular order in building? Are they going to build all the different sizes at the same time or start with one? And then when we looked at that before, we also were concerned about the amenities. Are they going to wait and build those all at the end, or when will those come online?
So the application was submitted with a phasing plan. I do believe there are currently 2 phases that the applicant proposes to construct this in. They are evaluating which phase will be phase 1. But as it's phrased in the MOU, there's a specific list of amenities that have to be started with the first phase, whether that's the north or south or east or west portion of the property. Whatever the first phase of development is for them, there is a list of which amenities have to be under construction, generally when those need to be completed. So that is covered in the MOU, and we have discussed that with the applicant.
What page of the MOU would I find that?
160, 162.
Got it. Would start on page 171 of your packet as it relates to open space and amenities, and it concludes on page 172.
Yep.
Some of the amenities as it relates to like the stormwater areas, those have to be in place as part of the first phase for the, or the entire development. As it relates to the walking trails, for example, those would only be required on the portions of development which they are actively constructing as part of that.
Anyone else before I invite the developer up? Yes, Mr. Barber.
Yeah, I just have a question, just it's kind of a first time, this live work, we've never really seen that before. This is the first time. I've seen it in other areas. It's seems very successful in other places. Prairie Road, Lee Summit, it's got a brand new one. Just curious, if that doesn't pan out the way the developer wants to, what this body, what would have to do to, say, change that back into R1, just single-family homes? What'd be the process?
So it'd be very similar to the process for this initial application. It would be considered an amendment to the preliminary plan for the Alara subdivision if it is approved. And so that would go back before, well, staff review to start with. It would go through the Planning Commission for their recommendation. As you'll see in the MOU, it's worded very specifically so that the area that's shown as live work right now can only be developed as live work. If the applicant decides that plan did not work out, there is a process that they would have to go through to amend that. Whether that gets rezoned to PUD to allow for additional single-family development or something else, it would still come back through the review process and end up in front of you all eventually.
Thank you. Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Gress, just two things on here. The live work is definitely an interesting part of this and innovative, and I look forward to seeing more on that. On page 156, when it talks about parkland dedication of approximately 15 acres was originally part of the preliminary plat, that parkland has been dedicated somewhere else, I'm assuming?
So it would actually be, if you're traveling down the recent extension of Johnston there on the south side, there's about 15 acres that were set aside for the city to be dedicated at some point.
Gotcha.
I don't believe that has been dedicated to date. That is something that would likely be addressed either with the Timber Trails third plat that abuts it or at some point in the future.
But anybody reading this packet at home, this isn't taking away 15 acres of parkland from this project, from another?
No, it is not.
And then second of all, my only thing with this, and I've heard this from voters, or not voters, I'm sorry, it's an election, from constituents, and we've done this in other neighborhoods in the past, but the side yard setback on this is 5 foot on every home, is that right?
It would actually be, so if you look at, it's actually page 156 in your packet. There's, and again, the applicant will kind of outline their specific products, but you'll see Lot A, Lot B, Lot C, and Lot D. And then those correspond to the areas on the preliminary plan that's included with the MOU.
Yeah, I'm looking, they all say 5 feet.
Right,
for a
and so
minimum
it would
side
be,
yard.
correct, yes, absolutely, you're correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Townsend, did you have something else?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. It was a fleeting question that came up from Mr. Barber's comment with regards to the dwelling units. And if this doesn't work out, you know, what happens at that point? But it sounds like that these we built when they're sold, and not necessarily after they're built, then figure out, you know, we have these buildings that don't work as we thought. We wouldn't tear them down and just put a single-family home on that. That would be cost-effective. So I guess my question is, with this PUD part of it, these are being built to suit, basically. They wouldn't build them unless they're sold. That's probably a question for.
That would be my assumption, but I'll let the applicant elaborate on that. One thing I wanted to clarify before we move on from the live work would be the next steps for that piece of it. If this is considered and approved tonight, the next step would be a final development plan or final plat, for lack of a better word, for the detached single-family component of it. The MOU is phrased that because the live work is a mix of kind of commercial, potential retail, parking becomes kind of a question in that. While it's outlined, the process for that would actually be site plan with our planning commission to determine the compliance with our landscaping requirements and some of those other things that you would find in more of a site plan process versus a residential plat.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Berenson?
Sorry, one more question here. So and allowing them to do a PUD, this is for Mr. Gress again. So as opposed to keeping this R1 and going PUD, the following changes are really the side yard setbacks. What are we as a city giving up by allowing this to go PUD? And more importantly, by allowing them to do a PUD instead of using our existing codes, are we as a city, what are we getting back for our residents? Are we getting additional trail miles? Are we getting, obviously we're not getting parkland, but what are we getting back in exchange for allowing them to alter what we already have in place?
Great question. So as I mentioned, the property currently does have preliminary plat approval for the Timber Trails development that Hut Midwest originally had approval for and is built out with the first and second phase of Timber Trails. With this new proposal, I don't think there's anything that the city is really giving up as part of that. We are affording the applicant the flexibility to do their specific type of product versus what the previous owner would have built. Some of those home styles are a little bit different. So we're affording them that flexibility to be able to do those different home products that will be discussed here in just a minute. We're not giving up the parkland as you asked because that is covered in the existing preliminary plat and will be dedicated at some point in the future. In terms of what a PUD would afford the city versus an R1 or an R1P would really be the MOU and locking in what the applicant, what was proposed to you this evening and what the applicant will discuss in terms of the amenities, the home styles, et cetera. What the city gains from this zoning district would be the new concept of live work, which is something new, something that's been in the code for a number of years and has never really fully realized itself. That's one. The other would be the MOU that solidifies that the amenities that are being proposed as part of this rezoning request are what will be built. I know in the past we've ran into in a typical R1 district where everything gets built but the pool or everything but the trail network. And so the approach of a PUD through that MOU ensures that that will not happen.
I appreciate that. So if this were going to stay R1, the side yard, not to keep hammering here, but a side yard setback on an R1 is 10 feet, is that right?
Approximately.
Approximately 10 feet. So we are allowing them to build a more denser concept, building more homes in the same amount of area.
I will say yes, and the way this is phrased, while the minimum setback is 5 feet, and I'll let the applicant talk to each of their home styles, that's simply the minimum. They can't go any less than that. Some of their home styles and lot sizes will be larger, 6,500 to 7,800. It is really in between kind of a standard R1 lot, and so we're still accomplishing some of those traditional R1 development type lots through the PUD. The PUD just allows those different options to coexist on the same property.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If there's no one else, and are you done, David?
I am finished. I'll take control of your screens while the applicant here approaches the
Now
dais.
invite the applicant up.
Good evening, Dan Foster with Schlegel, 14920 West 107th Street, Lenexa, Kansas, here representing the developer. Also here tonight is Brad Kemp with Clayton Properties Summit Homes, who will be building the project. So as outlined in the staff report, we're here tonight requesting rezoning for the 52 acres on the northwest corner of Dean Avenue and Lucy Webb Road. The request is a rezone from R1P to PUD, and that includes a request to approve a preliminary plan for the Lara project that contains single-family and live-work product as the staff described. So the majority of the project will be single-family, as you can see on your screens there. Just to orient you, north is up on this plan. We're having two streets connect into the project off Dean that will align with the streets that are coming out of Timber Trails, and we will have one alignment or street that comes out that aligns with the Benton House entrance there for the single-family portion. And then the live work will actually align with a drive, potential future drive to an undeveloped parcel there to our north. It does include 170 single-family lots and 9 live-work units. There will be 4 different types of homes on this, and that's part of the important part of the PUD is that we're allowed being able to put 4 different types of homes on here. They're identified as lots A through D on the plan currently. Eventually they'll have like Sendera has a collection name, and so it'll be a little nicer than Lot A and D. The lot sizes will range from 4,725 square feet to 6,500 square feet for the larger lots, and even those in the large lot area will be, some of those are even larger than that. It's based on neighborhoods by type. So essentially what we did, the light green on the plan there are the larger lots. Those are up against Dean and the existing single family. And then in the center portion of the area, there are our type B lots, which are kind of our mid-range lots. And then in the northwest and the southwest corners, up against the frontage road and the interstate, we have our type D lots, which are our smallest lots. And essentially the concept was to be able to transition from the existing single family to the more intense use of the highway and Benton House and other commercial uses along the frontage road, using this kind of transition of lots across the property. The live-work units are in the northeast corner, and our client has stated that they would build all three of those buildings at the same time, so there wouldn't be build one and then leave two. It's actually kind of a little interesting little pocket right there in that property, because there's a natural drainage that kind of separates that corner off from the rest of it, so it kind of felt naturally to put a little different product on that particular corner, and especially, again, given the fact that maybe some of the uses to the north might have a little more intense use, like the Benton House or some other types of things. The live work, as someone mentioned, is a new concept to the Kansas City area. There are a few under construction, or I think there's at least one or two that I'm aware of that have been completed, and they seem to be fairly successful. The amenity areas, the concept here was to provide a swimming pool, recreation space in the center of this neighborhood with all of the residential units kind of surrounding it. We'll have a swimming pool, a clubhouse, playground, and a multi-purpose turf activity area. There will be 2 green space areas through the site that run along the natural drainage areas from east to west, landscape buffers along the site perimeter, 3 decorative lakes, or lakes with decorative fountains that provide stormwater control and treatment. So one of the things that you would notice if you saw the original approved preliminary plat, they didn't have an amenity area. They didn't preserve the natural drainage features. They didn't have any kind of stormwater detention lake features. And so one of the reasons why we kind of went to this concept too was we're also trying to comply with the new city codes and ordinances for stormwater quality, which weren't necessarily in play at the time the original preliminary plat was done. Now this site does share some stormwater, 100-year stormwater detention in the Timber Trails detention basins. However, that was for 100-year detention. It wasn't necessarily for stormwater quality. And so in order to meet those stormwater quality features, we're preserving the natural features, and we're providing some amenity lakes on this site that you wouldn't have normally have seen with the approved preliminary plat. Let's see, can I change the slide, or do you?
You've got the clicker right there.
Let's see. This one. Not really changing for some reason.
I'm sorry, you only had the one slide that
Oh.
copied over.
So the homes will have a modern architectural style, which hopefully we'll have up here in a minute, which are unique to this area. It's a new concept to Summit as well. And they want to do this in order to provide housing choices, which is one of the things that you guys have said in your comprehensive plan. You want to provide a variety of housing choices, but also they don't want to compete with their own product down the road. So that's the other main reason why we're bringing in a little bit different product here. Again, the range in size from 1,100 square feet on the low end to 2,600 square feet on the high end, and the range in price from $250,000 to $450,000 in today's dollars. And we all know with everything, prices all over the board, who knows what those will ultimately will be. The homes will all have basements, 2 to 4 bedrooms, and 2 to 3 car attached garage. The live-work units will have a single-car garages, but they also have a driveway space behind that garage, and they have open parking specifically dedicated to the live-work units. So the way that we did the parking, in order to make sure that we had adequate parking for not only the commercial-type uses, but we counted that, and then we added additional spaces at, I think it was 2 per unit, on top of that, parking for the commercials, so that there was ample parking for the residents, or if they had guests come over, that they would have the ability to not only use the retail spaces, but to have their own dedicated spaces. So we request approval of the rezoning of the preliminary plan for the following reasons. So the project complies with the comprehensive plan as a low-density use. The proposed plan has a similar quantity of single-family lots. I think there was only a difference of like 6. And these are the architectural elevations that we have up here. So you can see it's a contemporary style, a modern farmhouse, a little bit different type of product than what you would typically see maybe in some other subdivisions around. Continuing on, the plan is in compliance with the code requirements for PUD. It includes single-family uses adjacent to existing single-family uses. It has perimeter buffers around the entire perimeter of the site that provide additional buffering to the property. The staff report in there had stated that the infrastructure can handle this particular development, and the property has remained vacant since it was annexed into the city many years ago, and Summit is ready to begin construction on the homes as soon as we can obtain final approval of this. So just summing that up again, it's not that the city is giving up anything, it's that you're gaining a variety of housing choices, you're gaining an amenity area, you're gaining attractive neighborhood, we're preserving natural drainage features, so you're going to gain additional open space there. And in regards to the open space and the trails, I failed to mention that one of the reasons, I think we have a note on our plan that says we're going to provide them, but due to topography and not knowing exactly what's going to end up happening there from a grading standpoint, we didn't want to commit to that being specifically located in a specific location on the plan. So in closing, Summit Homes is looking forward to bringing this quality, innovative homes to this area of your city. They're ready to begin the project as soon as final approvals are obtained, and we've reviewed the staff report, all the documents, found them acceptable, and Brad or myself would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of the applicant at this time? Mr. Behrens?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep beating this dead horse. It's not quite dead yet, sorry.
That's
On
right.
the side yard setback, and I forgot how I was going to phrase my question here. There's a lot of things about this I like a lot. I love how you have the different styles of homes. I really do like the work-play portion of this. I think that's, again, I said it's innovative, and I think we could use more of that, and I commend you guys for thinking outside of the box and doing that. What is the rationale for moving so many homes so close together? Why the 5 feet and not the 10 feet?
Well, one of the things you'll see in the concept is to have more of a traditional neighborhood feel that you would see in some of the older parts of the metro area. And if you've ever been to, say, Brookside, for example, the homes are a lot closer together. The other reason is that with this particular type of product, they're looking to reduce that yard footprint because a particular target market doesn't necessarily want to have to maintain a large yard or anything like that. The code says 7 feet, I believe, is what I recall, is the side yard. And we're asking for 5, maybe 10 if it's on a larger lot. But, you know, we do a lot of villa-type products, a lot of smaller home products for empty nesters, first-time home buyers, all that. And all of them typically have 5-foot side yards. So you'll have 10 feet between the building.
Anyone else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Since we do have a public hearing open at this time, I would entertain anyone from the public that'd like to address the council on this particular matter. Please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public hearing at this time. And if there's no further questions by the council, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3709, Alera PUD rezoning and preliminary development plan.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. The motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3709. Any further discussion? Yes, Ms. Abdelgawad.
Thank you, sir. Just a quick comment. I really like this concept with the multiple kinds of houses, and I like the live and work concept too. I'm excited to see how that works here. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Townsend.
I'll add a comment as well to Mrs. Abdelgawad. My wife doesn't like cookie-cutter communities, and this definitely speaks to the variations and options that are available to the area. So again, thank you, and definitely it's a value add when it comes to the different types of amenities that you're putting in, and the water features also helps beautify that particular corridor with the growth that's going on over there. So again, thank you for the concept. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend, and thank you, Mrs. Townsend. Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to echo Councilman Townsend. I had the little song, Little Boxes, playing in my head as you were getting ready to say that, so good job.
Thank you. Anyone else? If there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? We have 7 yes and 1 opposed. Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I always like to give the dissenting side an opportunity to express their reason
Absolutely.
for voting against if Councilmember Berenson's so
Mr.
inclined.
Berenson?
Yeah, I'll talk about that at closing comments.
All right, thank you. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3710 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3710 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into a street improvement reimbursement agreement with Clayton Properties Group, Inc. to construct the extension of Johnston Drive.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Gress to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. This is my last item, and I'll leave you guys alone for the evening. As the council will recall, the 2020 general obligation bond issue that was passed here back in 2020 did include funding for the extension of Johnston Drive from its current terminus, which is generally the eastern property line of Benton House, over to connect to Dean Avenue. To facilitate the construction and the public infrastructure construction as part of the proposed Alera that you all just heard, Summit Homes and the applicant has indicated their interest in participating in a reimbursement agreement with the city to take on that construction as part of their subdivision development process. And so what you see here this evening is that formal request, and the reimbursement agreement is now submitted for council's consideration. That will conclude staff report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? Yes, Mr. Ullman.
I would assume that this advances our timeline on this project. It was a GEO bond, but I think it was later in the timeline prior to this project. Is that a correct assumption?
That's correct, sir, and we always love it when we can partner with the developer.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? There's no further questions. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3710, Johnston Drive reimbursement agreement.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I will second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3710. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3605 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3605 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Holiday FX for installation, maintenance, and storage of the city's holiday displays.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Icky to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. The current contract with Holiday FX for holiday lighting services at City Hall and Centerview is set to expire this year. Staff publicly bid the project, and Holiday FX was the only vendor to submit a complete bid. Staff did provide documentation to several firms that did request, but Holiday FX was the only firm to respond with a complete proposal. And so per the city's policy, when a single bidder responds to a project, the company was fully vetted and interviewed to ensure that compliance with compatible costs and services. And just so that everyone knows that though Holiday FX is the only one on the list, we were comparing them against other competitors. This project really is coming to the council in two parts. The first part is for the holiday lighting itself, and that is the holiday lighting on the trees, the building here at City Hall, as well as Centerview. The second part of this project, as you'll recall, the lifespan of the mayor's Christmas tree had quickly come to an end. The tree itself we had purchased from a vendor out of state, and unfortunately that vendor had gone out of business. As part of that going out of business, their storage techniques and their maintenance of that tree was less than ideal, and so that tree needs to be replaced after this following year. And so the second half of this bid and part of this project is Holiday FX will be providing a tree as part of this overall proposal for the mayor's Christmas tree at TB Hanna Station. That concludes my staff report, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Yes, Ms. Forster.
Does that mean we get the tree? Like, are we buying the tree and they'll store it, or is it just every year we'll have to?
Correct. Much like the lights on the building and the trees here at City Hall and Centerview, we have purchased the lights at the building. We'll be purchasing the mayor's Christmas tree. The storage, the maintenance, the setup, the tear down is all done and handled by Holiday FX as part of this proposal.
Okay. Anyone else? If there's no further questions of staff, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we amend Bill 3605 to read Bill 3705 and approve as amended.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the a motion and second has been made to amend Bill 3605 to read 3705 and approve as amended. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously 8-0. Thank you. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3606 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3606 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Hofer Welker for a space analysis and design service for the proposed Justice Center.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would call on Mr. Icky to make staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. As part of the FY22 Capital Improvement Plan, Council approved a space analysis study to look specifically at anticipated space needs for a future Justice Center. Staff advertised the RFQ for this project, and Hofer Welker proved to be the most qualified. As part of the project, Hofer Welker will be seeking input from staff in the Police Department, the Emergency Management Department, and Animal Shelter, looking at future growth and staffing needs at a new Justice Center. That concludes staff report, and I'm free to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff on this item? Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, sir. How many RFQs did we receive and consider on this particular item?
Staff received 4 qualified from Arch Images, Matrix Consulting, SFS Dewberry, and Hofer Welker.
Anyone else have any questions? Thank you, sir. If there's no further questions of staff, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we amend Bill 3606 to read 3706 and approve as amended.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. A motion and a second has been made to amend Bill 3606 to read 3706 and approve as amended. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a note to the applicant, the word trees.
I've got to get him one so he can hug it. I've just got to get him one.
The one that I want to hug has been long removed from the post office.
We'll find you another one. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3607 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3607 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore amending the FY 2022 budget and authorizing the city manager to advance the HVAC replacement project in the Buildings and Equipment Replacement Fund.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Yes, I would
As
ask
it,
Mr.
as it turns on as you're getting ready to speak.
It's working. I would ask Mr. Hickey to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. As council may remember, back in October, November, there was a budget amendment at the time for an emergency replacement of one of the HVAC units. The compressor had completely failed. Although we were coming out of the summertime into the fall, there wasn't necessarily a huge pressing need for an air conditioner, and so we made council approve the budget amendment. We placed the order with our on-call HVAC engineer, Lippert Mechanical. And during that ordering process, we were made aware that for an HVAC unit of the size that the city needs, usually is at about a 6 to 9 month waiting period. We made that order. Tomorrow we'll be installing the one HVAC unit that needs to be replaced because it had failed. And as part of this budget amendment, we are planning for and ordering the replacement for the other 2 HVAC units on this building in anticipation that they also are at the end of their lifespan.
And to dovetail off of that, again, next week at work session, we'll be going into painstaking detail on what exactly has happened here and the background on this. Obviously, with 9 months lead time, we'll have time to talk to you all about that.
All right. Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? Yes, Mr. Barber.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. Thank you, Mr. Fairborn, for not putting, because of COVID, we need to go ahead and order it now. You put something that was logical. Thank you.
Anyone else have a comment or question? If there is no further discussion, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Townsend?
I had a quick comment that, Mr. Fairborn, you didn't have to turn the air off for us to approve this. We were going to do it anyway. But serious note, I move that we amend Bill 3607 to read Bill 3707 and approve as amended.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. A motion and a second has been made to amend Bill 3607 to read 3707 and approve as amended. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Okay, well, that concludes business this evening. We'll now move on to public comments. If anyone from the public would like to address the council at this time, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Seeing no one jump at the microphone, I'll start mayor-council communication, and I'll start on my far right with Mr. Barber tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Got one request. I'm probably going to need an arm extension down here if I'm going to be sitting next to Mr. Barrington so you can see me. But seriously, I want to say a big thank you to Councilman Circo and his public service for the last 4 years. It was an honor to serve with him on the council and appreciate what he's done. At the same time, I want to welcome Councilmember Forrester to the council. Appreciate your questions today. Good job. Want to also make some comments about the Alara project, the group from Alara. I really liked seeing kind of an out-of-a-box, something different, really totally different from what we've seen before. I know these neighborhoods are changing. We've got one in my neighborhood. And I've taken the time to go talk to some homeowners that live in those neighborhoods, and you find out that the starter families that get into these darker green areas right there are typically your younger folks with kids, younger kids, and they really talk about how it really becomes a tight-knit community. And I could see people, just kind of like in my neighborhood, stay within that community. They may move up in their homes as they get along and their family grows. So it gives them options to kind of stay in the same schools, same place, same routine. So I really like that concept. It's really interesting to me. I look forward to seeing it go up and talking to the people out there and see how they like it. But I think with the amenities and close and access to the roads and everything, I think it's going to be a success. Sure hope so anyway. I think that's all I have to say. Yep, that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to congratulate everybody who won their election recently, and welcome Ms. Forrester to our group here. We look forward to working with you. It wouldn't be fair to not mention Mr. Circo while congratulating you. I've always considered you to be a friend of mine. I like Tom as well, too. And you do have some big shoes to fill there. I'm going to miss Mr. Circo's comments at every meeting. He always had something to say. He was always seemed to have his pulse on what was going on. You know, in going around the city and just talking to people, especially in Tom's ward, I know quite a few people that live there. One of the resounding things that I heard about Tom Circo was, if you call Tom, something's going to happen. Tom gets things done. So he had a reputation for that, so you have that to live up to now. So welcome. And then on the neighborhood, I had a no vote tonight, and although I voted no on this, I am excited to see this part of town be developed. There's a lot here that I like. I really do like the work and live concept up here in the northeast corner. I think that will be a great amenity. I like how they did use the retention ponds. It looks like there will be some green space here. And I know I asked this question and Mr. Gressgrave gave a good answer to this, but I just don't feel like we as a city, when we let these PUDs come in, I know we have an MOU with this, I don't think we have to let these developers squeeze in more homes. If they want to do this in a portion of this development, it's completely understandable, but to do a PUD and say we have the right to do 5-foot side setback on the entire neighborhood, I think it's a bit of a reach. I don't feel like we as a city, as we the citizens, if we're gonna step back from our existing standard we already have and allow them to do PUD, I don't feel like we're getting a fair shake. I don't feel like we're getting anything in exchange for that other than what will probably be a nice community, but we could have that for the most part, with the existing zoning we had in place. With that said, I look forward to seeing this happen. They've built homes in our town before. This is not just my opinion. I hear this from quite a few people in the city. So I know I'm the lone dissenting voice up here, but I've heard this from quite a few people in my ward. So with that, I'll leave the comments to the next person. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend.
Guess that's for me, those comments. No. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to first off say thank you to Mr. Circo for his service to the community. As I was talking with some people earlier, and they said it accurately, Mr. Circo was a cheerleader for the city. If you ever talked to him about anything, he was always shaking the pom-poms, banging the drum, clashing the cymbals for Raymore, not just Ward 2, but for Raymore as a whole. So we will not miss his voice, because you will still hear his voice, as he said, throughout the community. Would just be in a different capacity. So we do wish him well and thank him for his service and the contributions he's made from this dais. He'll just be making them in a different forum. And welcome to Ms. Forrester. We look forward to hearing your voice, hearing you champion the city as well, which you've already started tonight. Unlike myself, the first night it was just like, yes, no, carry on. But you've definitely jumped in and really lend your voice to the conversation, so we appreciate that. So thank you and welcome aboard. As far as tonight's agenda, there's a lot done tonight, and another illustration of the growth in the community, as with the 2 rezoning projects that are up for first read in the Oak Ridge Farms community, expanding their footprint and the options that they have over there, as well as now with the Alera project and the variations of homes that we're offering in the community, which is another example throughout the city that we've done that with the Sendera project, the Prairie View, Eastbrook, and other communities that we're providing options for our current and future residents of the community. The different homes that have been here for 20 some odd years met that demographic and that type and style and desire of home for that era. And now we're seeing that this era in this market is requesting and desiring a different type of home product, whether it be multifamily, which is the Oak Ridge Farms designed, or those who prefer home ownership, but not necessarily the lot size that requires the maintenance that comes with that. That could be a young college graduate like my child looking for somewhere to go, but not necessarily want the full commitment of that, or someone wants to downsize that's retired and says, I've done it, been there, done that, don't want to do it again, but I still like to have the amenity in my front yard. So we appreciate the product that you're presenting to us tonight, and those that are forthcoming. I also want to appreciate Mr. Crass and the speaking specifically to the transportation piece, because we do hear that. I hear that in my capacity in some other areas that I serve with regard to, in particular, to the Dean corridor. We're the victim of our success, but at the same time, you know, we're kind of restricted by our jurisdictional boundaries and having to work with other communities. So I'm just glad to hear that that's not the first conversation that you're having with Belton, but you've always been having those conversations with Belton and other jurisdictions on ways that we can better the infrastructure in and out of our community, which was spoken to earlier, but the new roads and the new connections that we've done in the past 10, 20 years to make travel through our community much easier for our residents, which also makes it easier for our residents to get to those businesses, which we're trying to expand. So a lot of good things tonight. I appreciate it, and I can't go without saying thank you to the voters who reelected me for another term. Hopefully I'll continue to do my best to serve the community as we do for the next 2 years. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Ms. Forster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm learning. I want to say thank you to everyone, the voters that voted me in. I really appreciate the opportunity, and to be honest, I have a lot to learn, but I'm eager to learn, so hopefully I'll catch on really quickly. And I would also like to second with what Mr. Burke, was saying. I'm all about saving those trees any way we can, because it takes 50 years to get a beautiful tree. You can plant a new one, and I love that as well, but I think that just makes it feel more like that small town, the home that everybody loves and appreciates. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Wills.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to also thank Mr. Circo for his many years of service. He was a large part of our community and part of the growth of the community, and he helped to build Raymore to be the amazing city that it is. And I also wanted to welcome Councilmember Forster as well, and I look forward to the work that we will do together. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Abdelgawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will continue showing appreciation for Tom and the years that he served on the council. The one thing that I always heard people say about Tom is Tom loves Raymore. And so you couldn't meet Tom and have a conversation with Tom and not leave knowing that Tom loves Raymore. So just wanting to appreciate the time that he served on the council. I am looking forward to another 2 years sitting up here with all of you wonderful folks. So thanks to the voters of Ward 4 who have just reelected me to be their representative on the council. I always like also at this time to recognize other people who threw their name in the hat. It takes a lot of courage to come up here and sign up to get your name on that ballot. And so even those who didn't come out a few votes ahead this round, I encourage you to get involved in one of our boards or commissions as a volunteer. Keep coming to meetings and try again. I didn't win my first time, and sometimes it takes a couple. So if you're still interested, I can encourage you to continue trying. Couple other things. Cheers to the finance staff. 11th year of that certificate for excellence in financial reporting from the auditor. So congratulations to you all, and of course our city leadership who pushes and encourages them to just be the best. And then finally, of course, our dispatchers. From the bottom of my heart, I thank them for keeping our men and women on the roads safe in police and fire. So if anybody in the community has a chance to reach out to the dispatchers this week and let them know how much they're appreciated and that we value the work they do for our community, please take a minute to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Holman.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would like to say thank you to the voters who saw fit to return me to office. We as a council are doing good things for you, and we will continue to do so. Congratulations to council members Townsend, Abdelgawad, Wills, and Mayor Turnbow on being reelected and returned to office. And congratulations to newly elected Councilmember Forster. Thank you to former Councilmember Tom Circo for your service to the city. Tom, I know that you have always been involved with the city, and I know that you will continue to be involved and serve in various ways. And one final item, sir. It is very apparent to me that with the citizens of Raymore returning 4 of the 5 sitting council members to the dais, it just reaffirms to me that the 22,000 plus citizens of Raymore approve of what we have been doing and what we will continue to do. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wanted to welcome Councilmember Forster. Here we are. Let's get on it with Ward 2, but we'll talk more later. Want to thank Tom and everybody. Said it correctly. I didn't know Tom the first time I ran against him. I didn't know him at all. People told me stuff about Tom, but what is always been true is he does love Raymore, and that's always. And then when I got to know him for real, and it's always more important to actually get to know a person and have a conversation with them as opposed to what some person that might be your friend tells you about that person. So I'm going to do the same thing there. Also wanted to talk about. I put this. We had a lot of people in Ward 2 soliciting last week, and I was on my way up to City Hall to talk about something else, and I was probably dumbly stopped and asked the person, just parked on the side of the road, and said, "Hey, can you show me your permit to solicit in our neighborhood?" They're, "Oh, it's in my car 4 blocks away." I'm like, I don't know if that's enough time for you to get back to your car before someone calls 911, but you kind of need to have that. And I came up and found out that I was correct. That is correct. And go ahead and contact our dispatchers and say, hey, there's somebody that's in our neighborhood. They don't have proper identification, so we don't know what they're doing here. And that's something we want to keep on a limit. Last thing I wanted to mention, sometimes I feel like there has been some misconceptions about the whole concept of a planned urban development. And really what it is, for people that haven't read the packet, we've been talking about these kind of developments for a couple of years now. And the way I see it, it's kind of like a prenup. It's maybe uncomfortable, but you know what you're going to get. And if you don't get what is in there at the end, there's legal recourse. So just thought to put that out there. And also, lastly, never hesitate to email any of us, especially me. Email me. If I don't know that it's out there, then I can't help you with your problem. And that's what we're promising to do, is help you if you have problems in our city. So please email.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. I also want to congratulate my colleagues that were reelected to their positions this last week, and welcome Ms. Forster to the group. Looking forward to the next year and the future plans that the city has. The staff, as we talk about the progression of development here in our community, you talk about what staff provides to us by way of recommendations. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, they don't bring us things willy-nilly. They're well thought out, well planned, and have been thought through very thoroughly, and as it fits into our community. We work very closely with the Mid-America Regional Council on the variety of housing options that we provide here in our community. We work with other entities throughout the metropolitan area to make sure that we're working on transportation. That's why we have Mr. Townsend on probably too many committees. Poor guy doesn't get to work much because he's at a committee meeting most of the time. But he does work very hard at that and does bring attention to our area. And trust me, it does get noticed, and future plans are being looked at for the widening of I-49, potentially some work on the bridge going forward, which will help ease some of the traffic pains that we've had. Mr. Kratz pointed out tonight, many of the developed streets that have occurred throughout the last 15, 16 years here in our community that we take for granted. We haven't really thought back on that. It was great reflection to think back on all those streets that we have provided great improvements to and constructed. And it is, when you think about it from that perspective, it does kind of tell us we haven't looked at or not looked at 58 in any kind of a vacuum. We actually have looked at the traffic patterns for our residents here to ensure that they get in and out of the community safely. So I appreciate that report tonight very much, Michael. Thank you so much. And to move on, I'm excited about Johnny's. Thank you for that. I'm glad you met with them recently. That'll be a nice addition to our community. And, you know, lastly, the vote turnout. Let's talk about that a little bit, because as I look at it, there were only a little over 1,500 votes cast between the 4 wards. And frankly, for a community of about 23,000 now, that's pretty dismal. But does it tell us something else too? An astute gentleman mentioned to me that okay, there's a low turnout, but is it indicative of the satisfaction of our community as well? That change is not necessarily what we need right now. Now in Ward 2, they decided to do that, and that's fine. But I think we also need to think back and say, you know, maybe we're doing a pretty good job up here. Maybe the staff's doing a pretty good job of giving us developmental plans as we move forward in this community, and that there are those out there in the community that are satisfied with that. And I think that can be an indication of a low voter turnout as well. So anyway, I just want to give you my thoughts on that, and again, congratulate everyone. And my last thought is to also thank Tom Serco for his dedication to this city. Your comments are exactly right. Anywhere you were at, if you had Tom talking, he was talking the city up. He does a very good job, did a very good job, and got right in the face of people that were objecting to different things, told them what the thoughts and processes were going on here, and did a pretty good job of it, actually. And he will be missed, but I suspect I'll get a volunteer application from him very soon for one of the boards or commissions. So I wanted to thank Tom for that. And with that, I have nothing further this evening. Do we have any reason to go into executive session?
No, Your Honor.
All right. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn then.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we adjourn from the special city council meeting for April the 11th.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Motion been made and seconded to adjourn.